name's Doll Secrets to Detect. It's the name you trust, the Doll Detective.
The rain was working overtime on the window, drumming out a beat like it was warning me something big was coming. And it was. Tonight's guest isn't just another name in the classifieds of the doll world. He's MiraiChobits, a man with an eye for detail and a reputation that walks into a room before he does. For a couple years, he's been prowling the doll forum and the wider streets of the community, laying down reviews so honest you can feel the edges, and photo spreads sharp enough to draw blood. But Mirai's not just a collector, he's a craftsman of taste. His roots run deep in the neon-lit corners of Japanese anime, the pixel glow of photography, and the fine art of figure collecting. He doesn't just own a doll, he interrogates it, customizing, tweaking, and breathing life into SE masterpieces, or putting the latest Beslia Lucy and Love Nestle Vanessa under the lamp for a full workup. In this game, trust is hard to come by, but Mirai's earned his keep. He's a straight shooter, a pillar in the community, and a man who's not afraid to pull back the curtain and talk about what doll ownership really means. No shame, no shadows, just the truth. So lock the door, pour yourself something strong, and settle in. Welcome to the Interrogation Room, MiraiChobits.
Hi there. I'm glad to be on here.
All right, Mirai. Let's cut the small talk. Everybody's got a first time, and I want to hear yours. How'd you get mixed up in the doll game? Don't give me the polite version. Give me the real one. What was the spark that lit the fuse and dragged you into this underworld of silicone and secrets?
I started collecting anime figurines and merchandise back in 2008. Eventually, I came across a blogger named Danny Chu, and as I kind of followed his content, he eventually wrote up an article about Japan's Orient industry, which is a sex doll manufacturer. And that's kind of when I got interested in it. I looked at like all the website that they had, and I was like looking at all the dolls. But due to the price and obviously their life size, I was young at the time. That's not something I'm gonna bring into my life. It was just like an interest I took. So instead of that, I collected anime figurines. We usually call it bishoujo figurines, which is beautiful girls in Japanese. And one thing that always stuck to me was when I read a blog post Danny posted saying that when you first start out collecting anime figurines, it's the safe for work like designs and figures that you start with. Eventually, as you continue the years collecting, you start phasing towards the more like not safe for work, the nude and lewd ones. So with that, I've always been interested in like synthetic artificial women. Usually it's what we call 2D anime girls or so. And it's what consumes most of like my interest when I was younger, up till even now. So when I look for like dolls, it's usually something that's in between fantasy and reality. The face has to kind of look so fantasy-like that that kind of like girl doesn't exist, but she also has that realistic look to her that it makes you believe that she might exist in real life as well. So that's kind of how I approach my dolls, and I don't think it's the most popular choice in the West. I've noticed that a lot of people prefer like the realistic looking dolls that could pass for like a realistic female human. But I kind of prefer like the more anime fantasy realistic look.
So you traded PVC for TPE. From shelf queens in sailor uniforms to full-size dames with that anime sparkle in their eyes? Maybe it ain't the crowd favorite in the West, but in this city, a man's tastes are his compass, and yours points due east. Tell me, Mirai, these two worlds you've walked, anime figures and full-size dolls, do they ever cross paths? Or are they like rival gangs, eyeing each other from opposite ends of the street, never sure if they're gonna shake hands or throw punches?
Oh, sure. With the anime community, they're comprised of various ages, from like teenagers, underage, right, to 18 plus adults going into their 30s and even older than that. The anime community have already normalized interests in like fictional women. It's extremely popular. There's a lot of like, memes and words they come up with, like best girl or best waifu in the anime community, and they should be more open to owning sex dolls. It's just that with the price of sex dolls, these younger anime fans are not able to either afford them, or they haven't really struck out on their own in their life yet. They probably might live with others. They don't feel comfortable with like purchasing a sex doll and trying to hide the doll inside their rooms or something. But in the future, I think the anime community might be kind of like the future base of customers that the sex doll industry should tap into.
Sounds like you're saying the next wave's already waiting at the station. Just younger faces still cutting their teeth in the anime scene. If the doll game's smart, they'll lay the tracks now. 'Cause when that train pulls in, you either got a ticket or you're left standing in the rain. All right, Mirai, let's go back to the scene of the first crime. Who was your first doll? Paint me the picture. What she looked like, how she landed in your life, and then tell me how the habit grew, how one turned into two, and two into a collection that could fill a back room with stories.
Originally, it was actually just an offhanded joke I was making with one of my friends I made on Discord, where we were in this community where they would publish and translate Japanese, what we call doujinshis, which is amateur comic or manga, as the anime community knows. And as we were kind of browsing any random vendor website, I came across SC Dolls Tracy. She's a 161 centimeter F cup girl. Beautiful girl, by the way. I became captivated with her, and unbeknownst to my friend, I actually secretly purchased the doll. So that was kind of how I got my first doll. And even with my anime collection, I grow like this sort of sentimental attachment to them. I don't like selling off my figures or any of the merchandise I've bought, because I consider whatever I buy I like it enough for me to want to spend that kind of money on it. So even with my dolls, when I first purchased her, and as soon as she arrived and I opened her up, I immediately knew that she would take a special part of my life. And as soon as I dressed her up, every day onwards was just she looks too cute. And then I would take out my phone and I would just snap quick photos of her. I would never intended to continue or get into like photography or something like that. It just kind of happened because every day I would just dress her up in something new, just take a quick snapshot because she looks really cute, or I would try to pose her in poses that mimic the anime figurines or artwork that I've seen previously, I ended up really growing an attachment towards her. So much so that only 4 months in, her skeleton spine broke. It happened when I was positioning her into a bridal carry. So when I was lifting her up, her back just gave out and she collapsed and fell onto the floor out of my arms, and I dropped down with her and I cradled her, and I'll be honest, I teared up. Something funny too is I didn't know if I was tearing up because this special girl that I brought into my life broke, or is it the amount of money that I spent on her just kind of disappearing in 4 months. So I was pretty devastated, and I did contact my vendor, as well as the SC doll representative. SC responded first, so they gave me a choice to replace her body for around like a shipping cost or so. Because I was so green at the time and I just kind of wanted my girl back in one piece, I accepted it, which that eventually led me into being more serious in my photography hobby that I kind of found along the way.
4 months in, and her back gave out. That's rough, pal. First doll's supposed to be all honeymoon. Late nights, new memories, no cracks in the story. Instead, you're filing a report and waiting on a replacement. I can see how that leaves a mark, not just on the doll, but on the man who brought her home. Mirai, somewhere along the line, a doll stops being just silicone and steel. Has your relationship with him grown past the physical into something deeper? Something that sticks with you long after the lights go out?
Well, originally it's kind of similar to how I collected anime figurines. It's just this impulse you feel that, it might upset women to hear this, but because it's a product you buy, you have this impulse where if you see like the next pretty one, you really want her too. Unfortunately for me, even though I currently have about 5 dolls right now, the special one in my heart is still my first one. She captivated me then, and she still does now. So despite some of the other dolls being probably people would consider a lot more pretty than her or so, I still consider my first one the unique girl in my heart. As far as how I see them all, I sort of consider them kind of like all my girlfriends or so, kind of like in a harem. And I do spend time with each single one of them. Unfortunately, with my job, I'm away from my home like half the week or so. So when I come back for the weekends, I pick either one or two to spend the weekend with, whether that's taking photos of them or being intimate with them. I think of them more than just kind of like a physical product, despite how I purchase them is kind of through similar to just buying the next cool thing on the block or so. But I do view them more as my girlfriends or something like that.
Your first love's always got a way of keeping the top spot, but calling them your girlfriends, that tells me this ain't just a hobby. It's a whole chapter of your life. Sounds like each one's got her own story, her own place in your heart, and you're not just collecting dolls. You're collecting relationships. Now, Mirai, I know you got a weakness for soft, squishy thighs. Can't say I blame you. But I also hear you've had a rough go trying to get the straight dope from the factory floor. Ever run into a vendor or manufacturer who just couldn't or wouldn't hand over the photos you needed to seal the deal?
Yes, it actually happened a bit earlier this year, around February, right before the Chinese companies went on their New Year's vacation. There's this new brand that popped up right at the end there, and they had this one doll that I just took a fancy to, and I knew I was kind of being pushy or so, because they most of their staff were obviously on vacation or so, but I kept shooting them like messages, or I'd shoot like vendors messages about this particular doll because I really wanted to know. Due to her being a silicone doll, I was very reluctant to kind of just forge ahead and place an order or so for her. So I wanted to get some information first, and I do have one silicone doll from SC, and despite how beautiful she looks, she's amazing. But despite all that, physical compatibility wasn't really to my liking. She was a bit too firm for me. I kind of prefer the softer feeling that TPE dolls give you. And also, I had slept with a hug pillow throughout most of my adult life anyways, because I collect anime figures and merchandise, and one of those merchandises includes this anime girl printed on a hug pillowcase, and that's kind of what I cuddled with. So I want something comfortable to kind of hold on to when I'm kind of sleeping, and the silicone doll I had from SC wasn't really that, despite how beautiful she looks. So when I started inquiring about this doll from this new brand, I kept asking them, would they be willing to show me a video of how soft or squishy the doll's thighs were, because she's a thick doll. So I want to know if the thighs were squishy at least, because I think that's probably what I had really wanted for my SC. It was when I would get intimate with her, I felt like the firm thigh felt really uncomfortable for me. So the vendors and the manufacturer, I guess they have like one representative that would kind of respond over the New Year's vacation. They would send only the videos that show off how bouncy the breasts or the buttocks are, and I would reply that, can you show me the thighs to see if they're squishy or not? But I would never really get like a honest response, and they would always say they would get back to me and then just kind of ghost me. There was this one user on TDF who did get like, I suspect that it's an early test model or something. I'm not sure, but it felt that way just from an outsider looking into how he wrote his review and the questions he was getting from other people, how he responded. It felt really like he was kind of promoting the doll. So I would shoot him a question and, hey, could you show me a video of how soft the thighs are? He wouldn't show it to me too for whatever reason, whether he doesn't have the time or something, but he reassures me that the thighs are soft. But I really wanted to see a video before I commit, because this is like a $2,000 plus silicone doll. I didn't want to buy one and then be like, it's her thighs are too firm for me and not to my liking, despite how beautiful she looks. So I do feel like a lot of the manufacturers and even the people they chose to review their dolls kind of hide the fact of any parts that are not very impressive or amazing about the doll. Kind of like if the body's too firm or so, they kind of hide it and they don't really want to talk about it or reveal too much information on it, because it kind of compromises like the advertisement for the dolls or so. And it's unfortunate, because if I got a serious answer and if they didn't kind of like just ghost me, I probably would have bought that doll. But because they were kind of like ghosting me, I ended up looking at a different brand and ended up buying a doll from a different brand.
So you had to walk away from the dame you had your eye on. All because no one could show you how soft her legs danced under the touch. That's the trouble, ain't it? They'll give you glamour shots of the usual suspects, but the quiet details, the parts that make or break the deal, those stay locked in the dark. Sounds like the industry's missing a trick. Mirai, in this game, a bad buy can haunt you longer than a shadow in a back alley. How much homework should a buyer be doing before picking out a silicone doll? I know I spent months working the case, digging through leads, chasing down details, before I pulled the trigger on mine. What's your take?
So I think a good amount of research should go into before a person buys their first silicone doll, because despite how beautiful the dolls look, they look amazing. But most modern silicone dolls being manufactured right now, they are manufactured standard with a foam core, and this foam core is what causes the doll the overall body to feel very firm to the touch when you try to squeeze it. Although it's also due to the foam core that gives these silicone dolls those amazing sculpt proportions and keep it that way, compared to like a TPE doll where they may look nice, but if you kind of lay them down or so, that body sculpt kind of disappears because it's being crushed by the weight of the doll. But for the silicone dolls, they're able to keep that shape that made them very attractive in the first place. But in terms of touch and physical enjoyment of spending time with a silicone doll, I think more research for a buyer should be taken into account before they commit, because if they prefer a softer doll or something like that, not every silicone branded doll is made the same. So say if you buy one from Iron Tech, right? It's not going to feel the same as if you bought one from, let's say, Essie. Those two silicone dolls are not made the same way. But for TPE, you can generally get an idea how a TPE doll is going to feel, because they're all kind of made the same way. With silicone, some manufacturers, I realized after some research, they would use a foam core and keep the frame a bit smaller, add more silicone into the mold, which allows the doll to feel a bit softer when squeezed. Some manufacturers use much more of the foam core for the outer layer of the doll, so when they pour that silicone into it, there's this tiny layer of silicone that's just kind of covering the foam core, and when you squeeze on it, you're instantly met with that firm sensation touch from the foam core. And it's, some people like it, some people don't. For me, I don't really enjoy touching or even cuddling something that's really firm. So depending on the customer's preference, or let's say a potential buyer's preference, they really need to know that a lot of the reviews or suggestions people give out is very dependent on their preferences. So these potential new buyers need to understand what kind of doll they're looking for. And if they want silicone, do they want a softer silicone doll, or would they be okay with a firmer one? And going back to personal experience from other customers and owners of silicone dolls, some people do prefer the foam core being firmer. I've heard that they consider it to feel much closer to kind of a human body, where it's not all just jello. And it's, in my opinion, that's also kind of a preference, because women don't feel that way anyways. It's kind of you're not gonna grab the ass and you feel this soft jelly part, but the tips of your fingers are touching this really firm foam core underneath. So in my opinion, it's just kind of a preference. You're trading softness for I guess firmness between a TPE doll and a silicone doll. So it's, in the end, it's a preference, but a lot of people kind of defend their preference, I would say, due to dolls in general being like an intimate product. Some view them as like, girlfriends or wives or boyfriends. And they want to defend their doll, they want to defend this doll that they grew attached to, that they found love for. And if people say their dolls don't feel as nice or something, they sort of react with a sort of like defensive like position and debate back defensively over their choice of material, because that choice of material is what comprises this romantic partner that they found in the doll.
Yeah. Facts are one thing, preference is another. And in this town, folks will fight to the death over both. You start poking at a man's opinion on his doll, and suddenly it ain't about specs or foam cores anymore. It's about pride. And pride's a tough nut to crack. All right, Mirai. Let's talk survival skills for the fresh faces. When a rookie steps into this racket, where should they hang their hat? Places like TDF, Love Doll Network, maybe some Discord backrooms? And while we're at it, what are the biggest red flags that say, "Turn around, pal, you're about to get taken for a ride"?
Resources, I still consider TDF, the doll forum, probably still the king of where information lies for sex dolls. If people want to research into whichever manufacturer or even which particular doll they're interested in, TDF is still kind of the king for that. I know that the Reddit space, the subreddit sex dolls, they have a lot more users there, probably comprising of like various ages as well compared to like TDF, but they don't really offer that much information, and people consider TDF to be strict or so, but I feel like the Reddit space is a lot stricter. So it's even harder to get like information on there, or even like find information on there about manufacturers or reviews for sex dolls. I guess going into Discord is also a good bet. You could probably mingle in with some of the manufacturers' social media representatives. They're also a pretty good source to try and get like factory photos or videos from. But I don't think they're always very reliable for whatever reason it is. Sometimes you get like good videos or photos from them, and then sometimes they reply back saying that they don't have any available materials based on that doll to show you, and then you're just kind of stuck trying to figure out what to do next. So I would still consider TDF a really, really great place to start your research, as there's a lot of history dating back several years about which dolls and which manufacturers, even vendors, which one to choose from, which one's better, their after-service sales and all that, how they respond to you or so. The biggest red flag is when either a manufacturer or vendor kind of just ghosts you instead of trying to see if they could provide you with any sort of material based on the doll you're asking about. Usually that means that there's something they don't really want to show you. And going back to that brand that I was talking about back in February early this year, that's what I kind of got there. Something about the doll, about the thighs, that I wanted to know if they were squishy or not. They wouldn't really give me a straight answer. And I felt like they were trying to hide the fact that maybe it's a bit too firm compared to what I was asking. And maybe they didn't want to show me because that would kind of cement my decision right away. And unfortunately, though, I did find out later that they do have something really nice for their dolls. And I think, though, it wasn't around the time when I was questioning them. So that's an unfortunate scenario. But that's kind of what I considered red flags. If they're unwilling to show you materials on the doll, then they're kind of hiding something that they don't view as positive about the doll itself.
TDF's like the public records office of this city. Everything you need to build a solid case if you know where to look. But when a vendor clams up, won't answer your questions, or ghosts you outright, that's not just a red flag. That's a body in the alley and a trail you don't want to follow. We know you've penned some sharp reviews in your time, Mirai, but here's the bigger picture. How do you think reviewers could raise the bar for the whole industry? What's it going to take to turn a handful of good write-ups into a standard that keeps every player in this game honest?
So one thing when I was like spending a lot of time researching in TDF is there's actually not very many people who really understands how to write a review, and this includes me as well, because I've left some review that when I go back to now and read it, I'm like, I'm just kissing ass right now. A lot of the issues with reviewers is when they receive their dolls, they're really excited about it, right? And one of the community standards is to, when you receive your doll, you know, you want to write a review and talk about the doll in general. And usually because these are written right when they receive the doll, there's just barely anything that would be considered like a negative towards the review. Everything would just be glowing, right? So I think if people were to kind of not write the review within like the first few weeks they receive the doll, and instead, you know, prepare the materials, take your photos, take your videos, collect some of your thoughts, and then give it some more time, and then really settle in with your doll before you start writing up that review. Because with mine, when I wrote my review for my SC Silicone Pro doll that I left into TDF, it was just like this glowing, amazing review. Nothing wrong with the doll, you know, I loved every bit of her. But when I got the chance to meet Faye Dollheart and he asked me to write a review for his website, I was like, sure. But then this time I tackled the review in a different way. I was more honest. I wrote down what I liked, what I didn't like, whatever they could improve on, what I would have liked to have seen. And that's kind of how reviews should be written. But in the doll community, a lot of first-time buyers or so, they're so quick to write this review that they haven't even really lived with the doll yet before they could finalize all the thoughts that they have. And then there's also these, it's no secret, doll manufacturers would offer review dolls to certain members of the community, depending on how active they are, what kind of presence they have, their history and all that, their activities. These people, because they received a free review doll, you know, they don't want to bite the hand that fed them. So a lot of the times it's just these glowing reviews too. It's easy to spot them from like a mile away, as long as you don't have like rose tinted glasses on. You could pretty much tell that everything written by this reviewer is just kind of like an advertisement for the manufacturer and the doll. So if people were more honest, they would probably set the bar higher. And not only that, if they're more honest with their reviews, it would also force the manufacturers to take into consideration the critiques that they have about the dolls and improve upon it. Because if all they ever receive is just positive things about their dolls, it's like, where is there to improve upon? So I think if there's just more honest reviews, it would push the manufacturers to up their game as well.
I've been guilty of that myself. Fresh doll smell still in the air, excitement clouding my judgment. You bang out a review in that honeymoon haze, and it reads like a love letter instead of a case report. But you're right. Give it time, let the shine wear off, and you start seeing the cracks in the paint. That's when the real story comes out. All right, Mirai, let's flip the coin. What makes customers skeptical? What's the thing that takes a bright-eyed buyer and turns them into a grizzled cynic who trusts vendors about as far as they can throw a silicone torso? Is it broken promises, shady photos, or just too many nights watching the wrong kind of crime dramas?
I don't think the manufacturers and vendors understand how skeptic non-first time customers are about dolls in general, because now that they have like an experience with the dolls, they know what they're looking for next, and what they want out of a doll and what they don't want out of a doll. So they have a bunch of questions. These questions are just going through their heads when they're browsing either a vendor website or they're browsing like forums and other platforms for information. And one thing that came across to me when I was being asked questions from interested buyers who saw the dolls that I have and wanted to know more about them, they're extremely skeptic about the quality of the doll or any of the promotional materials they've seen from the manufacturers, especially the videos in general. A lot of these videos about the dolls, especially for like the showcasing the jiggles of like the breasts, jiggles of the butt, overall softness of the doll. A lot of these videos are edited with slow motion and I believe like a smooth effect layered on top. So it makes these slow motion videos look extremely visually stunning when you see them. It's like it almost feels like you could touch the doll and feel it for yourself, and that's kind of what customers want. You're showing these videos to customers, and when they go around and probably even buy it and they receive it, and it's not like in the videos, and then they realize that that video was edited in a way where the visual effects are slightly enhanced. So that increases even like the skepticism even more. So I was chatting with this one guy who was interested in one of my doll, and we were both kind of like going over like these videos showcasing this doll, and I had to remind him that these videos are kind of edited, and don't go in expecting the doll to really react in that certain way when you're kind of like shaking her or slapping her or squeezing her. So that plays a huge role into customer skepticism. And I don't really think the vendors or the manufacturers, social media reps really understand that. So when a customer is asking questions about a doll to vendors, a lot of the times they don't really provide the necessary information. Similar back to the manufacturer I was interested in this past February, where I would ask for, can you show me a video of the doll's thighs? They instead sent me videos of just the breasts and the butt being smacked or squeezed, and I was like, this isn't what I'm asking for. So a lot of the times they do that, and it just kind of creates this whole scenario where the customer is kind of upset, and now they don't really trust the vendor or the manufacturer no more, and that usually leads them to looking into a different brand. So that's like a lost sale for vendors and manufacturers right there. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how things are.
I've spotted that con too. They dress her up under soft lights, run her through a beauty filter, maybe even tweak the curves in post. Then she shows up at your door looking like she just got off a long bus ride in the rain. That's how trust gets bled out of this business, one overproduced clip at a time. Mirai, the sale's just the first handshake. How important is what comes after? When the honeymoon's over and a problem shows up at your door, do you think after-sales support from the vendor or manufacturer is a difference between a loyal customer and one who's ready to skip town?
I think after sales service is one of the most important things in purchasing dolls, especially because the Chinese manufacturers are obviously based in China. So they're shipping these dolls across the ocean to the Western markets. And with that, it's very hard for the average consumer to fix these dolls if, say, they get scratched or cut, or even if like the skeletal spines or hips break. There's a lot of like members on TDF who has this skill set that could fix these things, but the average like person who just consumes and buys these dolls as a kind of like consumer product, they're not going to have access to these skills. They're going to have to learn it. So it's extremely inconvenient. But with that said, it's understandable that it's very hard for the manufacturers to kind of fill in this area of after sales service for maintenance or repairs. Although I think one thing that really kind of helps a lot is just open communication with the customers, responding to them on time, letting them know that the manufacturers are actually listening and hearing and reading the emails that are sent to them. And a lot of these responses and fixes the manufacturers offer is based on a case-by-case basis, which is understandable because they don't really know what the user has done with the doll, whether it's putting a lot of strain on the skeleton or taking care of it in certain ways. So sometimes they're kind of reluctant to just offer up a free replacement. Although I think a really good approach is similar to what my experience with Aero Venus has been. When they were still Love Nestle, just about a year ago, I had purchased a silicone torso doll from them. And early on, the area around its gel butt and hip kind of like separated a bit. It's not big, but it was there, so it's kind of like you just spent like hundreds of dollars on this doll, and the silicone there has already been tearing, which is normal for silicone dolls from my understanding. But for consumers who don't have a lot of money, they would consider like this is as a huge investment. They'd get pretty upset. What Aero Venus has done for me at the time was they responded quickly and even provided free silicone glue for me, as well as like videos on what to do, how to clean the doll before applying the silicone glue, sealing it up. Another thing they did that I was really impressed with was even when right when I purchased the doll, they would send me emails about the status of the doll. Whether it's in production or when you get a shipping tracking number, and they would actually track the package alongside with you. And whenever it clears customs or reaches the country destination, they would send personalized emails to you saying that your package is here at this time, give you an estimate of the shipping date, and wish you well with your product. I think that adds a lot into showing goodwill towards the customer. And even if like the harder situations where the doll ends up getting cut or experiencing certain issues, failures, even with those, I think if they show an attempt to kind of like talk with the customer, be understanding, that would actually go a very long way. And I think Aero Venus, out of all the ones I've experienced, does a really great job with that. But understand it's always a case-by-case basis too. So hopefully customers can be more understanding of that, as well as manufacturers being more understanding of what customers are going through when these sorts of issues rise up and they're asking for after-sales services.
Yeah, I hear you. Not everyone's got the tools or the steady hands for a repair job. I know a couple fellas, names like John 1972 and Dullmacher, who could fix just about any doll problem you throw at them. But most folks don't have that kind of backup. That's why after-sales service is gold in this racket. I've dealt with Silicone Lovers and You Lovers doll myself, and both came through when it counted. Mirai, Once your name starts getting around, you're not just another face in the crowd, you're an influencer, whether you like it or not. Has wearing that badge changed the way you write your reviews or deal with folks in the community? Or do you keep swinging the same way, no matter who's watching?
Originally, I was just like a regular customer who bought my doll, received her, and then just write up a review, which was actually just me being like excited about my doll. Becoming like a actual like doll reviewer didn't really strike me until I experienced my doll failure 4 months in, and the spine broke. So a lot of doll vets wouldn't have taken the offer that I took from SE at the time. Most would probably consider it a ridiculous offer and raise hell on like TDF, right? But for me, I was very green, so I didn't want to get ghosted by like the manufacturers or something. And the vendor I went through doesn't have the greatest reputation, from my understanding after doing some more research on them. You will still get your doll, but their after sale service, as mentioned in the previous topic, they weren't the best at it. It's something they could probably improve on. That's the reason why I took SE's offer. But in the end, that actually led to a really good thing, because when I got the new body, I didn't really do too much with it besides taking photos of her majority of the time. It wasn't until around October, I believe, where a member on TDF approached me and asked me questions about my TPE doll from SC. He apparently bought a silicone doll from another brand, and he didn't really enjoy the physical compatibility with the doll, as it's similar to my my preference, where the foam core was just a tad bit too firm, and he wanted something softer. And he had previously seen photos I took on my doll, and I uploaded onto TDF, and he ended up really liking her too. So he asked me about her. And one aspect he wanted to know was whether having sex with the doll is enjoyable or not. And I couldn't really answer him right on the spot, because I hadn't been engaging in that sort of intimate relationship with my doll for several months. I believe the last time was around like June or July. And then now it's October when he asked me that question. So I spent the time to get him an honest opinion of sex with my TPE dolls for him. And a day later, when I was cleaning her and moving her about, I noticed like a sloshing sound coming from her abdomen, and I knew instantly that it wasn't normal. And eventually, when I used my endoscope, I realized that my TPE doll was afflicted with that infamous TPE ball vaginal tunnel sealer that was a huge major issues that plagued a lot of like TPE dolls being made prior to that year. So I had asked SC for help again, and whether my doll the skeleton would be contaminated and compromised and start rusting. They didn't really offer me a solution this time that I really liked, although I wasn't really looking for like anything major as well. And as we continued our messages back and forth, they realized that I also had purchased one of their silicone dolls that summer. So with that, they extended me an offer of testing out an STPE doll of my choice. They gave me the choice to choose whichever doll I want. And that's kind of how I stumbled into an influencer type of like user amongst the doll community. Although over in China, they have a certain they had coined a certain name for customers who act kind of like as influencers, and they call it KOC, which is key opinion consumers. These KOC members are or have like lower follower counts, or they're just kind of like reviewers. But in the sex doll industry, KOC members are actually more valued than the typical influencers that we Westerners are accustomed to. With the sex doll industry, most customers make purchasing decisions based on actual reviews and videos and photos from actual customers who own these dolls. Having become a KOC, although in a small way, it really shapes how I kind of approach reviews and my interactions with the sex doll communities. It starts opening your eyes, and you start seeing like how certain preferences are treated as fact-based upon the dolls. But it really makes me want to go in and leave a comment and say that the things that they claim about these dolls are actually just a personal preference, and the better way to help interested buyers would be to ask them what kind of doll would they prefer, and what kind of activities are they going to engage with the doll. And that usually helps a lot more than just kind of glorifying certain dolls because you're excited about receiving one. But that's how I kind of got into the role, and it does shape how I interact with other members. Sometimes you want to be more aggressive in your opinions, and sometimes you kind of want to lay back off of it. It's a learning process, but I take it day by day.
Day by day, huh? That's the mark of a pro who doesn't even know he's a pro. I've seen your shots, Mirai. The lighting, the framing, the way you make a scene tell its own story. That's not just point and shoot work. That's art. And if you're calling that a learning process, I can't wait to see what graduation looks like. Mirai, every town needs fresh blood to keep the lights on. How do you think the doll community can pull in new faces? What's it going to take to get the curious to step out of the shadows and into the room?
So it's a really hard question to answer because how niche the sex doll community is. And not only that, there's platforms, right? Like let's say TDF, Reddit, Discord, Twitter, X, Facebook. They're all kind of controlling to a certain extent where it's really hard to kind of like talk about sex dolls openly. Even for me, I'm actually shadow banned on X, so that's really a bummer. It's impossible for my account to attract new faces. People who've interacted with me before or interact with the accounts that I interact with too, they could find me eventually, but for new faces, they're not going to see what I post on my X account. One thing a lot of these manufacturers don't get the opportunity to do is to openly be able to promote their dolls without any restrictions. TDF employs a certain style, and even Reddit kind of cracks down on promotional materials. I know Faye Dollheart has a helper, and the subreddit kind of cracked down on Faye's material, saying that he's kind of spamming or something. And it doesn't really help like that subreddit in a way, because people can't get information from the manufacturers. So they're always like asking questions like, what's this doll? Who's this doll? Where can I buy this doll? Nothing against the mod for the subreddit, but I feel like his information is slightly outdated. Although his intent is genuine, he's just trying to protect his members from getting scammed. Due to that, it's also preventing them from finding legitimate sources on where to buy sex dolls, and that's an unfortunate situation in that community. In Discord, I realized that a lot of Discord members are just kind of lurkers or ghost members, and every manufacturer kind of has their own Discord channel too. So even themselves are limiting what can be talked about in there. because they're not going to really want to see like a rival manufacturer being talked about in their space. So in my opinion, I think whoever can firstly create a platform or build a community where open and free discussion can be had about sex dolls and vendors and anything related, without limiting what can be talked about. Whoever can do that could probably promote sex dolls into a new era. Although it's extremely hard to build a community from the ground up, and the amount of work and probably financial requirements to do that is going to be extremely substantial. Although I believe that there's also an untapped market with the anime community. In my humble opinion, I think that anime fans are more open to the ideas of sex dolls, especially because most of them probably have like an anime figurine in their homes or other kind of like anime merchandise. Most likely they feel a certain way towards like a 2D anime girl, and I think sex dolls could fulfill that gap within their fantasies, with like cosplays and all that. Whichever business can tap into that market successfully will probably be the ones who are forging a new era for the sex doll communities and the industry.
Yeah, sounds like you're talking about the big score, the one move that could change the whole game. Bring the anime crowd into the doll scene, and you're not just adding numbers, you're building a bridge the whole industry can walk across. Question is, who's going to be the one to lay down the first plank? Funny thing is, I've seen a player already making moves in that direction, MRL Sex Doll. They're trying to bring that anime crowd into the fold, sure, but they're still running those pop-up spinny wheel gimmicks like a carnival barker on payday. Clean up that act, polish the pitch, and maybe they'll be the ones to make it stick. I gotta say, kid, I like your style. Before we turn out the lights in this interrogation room, you got any last words for the folks listening? Something they can take with them when they step back out into the rain?
In the end, I do believe that humans are a social creature, and we do crave that human interaction. But unfortunately, some people don't have the same success as others in our social life. I think dolls can fulfill that void, and despite being synthetic, a doll can still be as fulfilling to us as a real relationship. As we are unable to escape from such a reality, a doll can bring our dreams and fantasy into this reality. That's my belief.
That's beautiful, kid. Real beautiful. Now, if you'll just sign right here, I can stamp the papers and cut you loose. The rain's still falling out there, but at least you're walking free.
But I don't want to really go yet.
Careful, kid. Hang around too long in this room, and you start spilling secrets you didn't even know you had.
I still want to stay here. No.
Yeah, I get it. Some rooms are hard to walk out of, but the night's waiting, and every case has to close sooner or later. So go on, kid. Hit the streets, keep your powder dry, and don't be a stranger. That's the kind of class act we like to see in this chair. MiraiChobits, sharp mind, sharper eye, and a steady hand in a game that doesn't always play fair. But every case has to close, and this one's stamped and filed. Until next time, folks, keep your eyes open, your story straight, and don't be afraid to knock on my door. This is the Doll Detective signing off. Case closed.